Lord of Mysteries, Amon, I'm Here to Steal Your Throne by author Zhi Chi Rou Zong Chapter 182-195. Chapter 182 Miguel, How Did You Do It? Afternoon, Number 40 Kent Cell Street, Orlando Interpersonal Relations Center, Squad Station. You want me to list the names of every woman I've ever dated? Miguel stared at Kornli in horror. All 346 of them. Captain Al sighed. Detective, really did have a good memory. This guy only had about 200 souvenirs. Could it be that he only developed the habit of collecting them after dating over 100 women? Forget it, I don't want to think about it, it's exhausting. If they're not living in Backlund, don't count them. I only want women who reside long-term in Backlund and have a certain status, or influential opera singers with some clout. Kornli said wearily. I need their names, addresses, the location of our last date, and most importantly, physical habits, like dominant hand, any distinguishing marks, scars, that sort of thing. There were some marks on the ladies I never got a clear look at. Miguel shook his head. Most theater boxes don't have decent gas lamps, and some places are even worse than those boxes. I give up. Boss, can I hit him? Madame Luoluota pressed her right hand against the knuckles of her left, producing crisp pops. For the female friend, Madame Luoluota, who also had a bit of a obsessive-compulsive disorder, save that request until after this case is closed. Captain Al sighed again, covering his eyes with his right hand, as if he couldn't bear to look at Miguel. Just write what you can. Kornli helplessly took a cigarette from the box on the table and offered the pack to Captain Al. Miguel grabbed a stack of white paper and a fountain pen, scribbling furiously while glancing up at the ceiling, as if recalling the pleasant memories those women had given him. We don't need the details for now. Madame Luoluota rapped the table with her right fist. Miguel jumped and started writing even faster. That's it, 6 in total, 3 of them titled. Miguel handed the sheet to Kornli. If I see them again, I'll remember more. Kornli took the notes and studied the 3 marked names at the top. Baroness Rihanna Fuller, 32, widow, lives at number 16 Vanilla Avenue, Empress Borough, has a scar on her right hand left by her late husband. Court Baroness Zoya McCarthy, 34, on her 3rd marriage, resides at number 27 Fallen Leaf Avenue, Empress Borough, 2 moles on her left cheek and a congenital defect on her right index finger. Selena Morton, court lady, 37, twice married and now single, lives at number 6 Winter Night Street, Empress Borough, a circular scar on her right forearm. Boss, we need to pay these 3 titled ladies, or rather, ladies with positions, a visit, Kornli said. What should we watch for? Asked Captain Al. Whether the locations of their scars match what Miguel described, Kornli replied. My memory's always been excellent. Miguel shot Kornli a sideways glare of dissatisfaction. It's only our first day working together, but I never doubt a Beander's memory. Kornli said. You're coming too. Kornli pointed at Miguel. As the one involved, you should still remember how it felt to be with them. The chemistry of a first meeting between man and woman is hard to forget. And tonight your job is to sense the difference between that first encounter and the second. You're an expert as well. Miguel's eyes lit up. For that line, I'll work overtime tonight, just this once. 2 people are enough for this sort of thing. Captain Al stood. Miguel and I will go. You 2 rest at the squad. If anything comes up, I'll telegram from the nearest office. Angela walked in from the doorway carrying several sandwiches and a kettle of hot coffee and tea. Captain Al took the bag and led Miguel out of the room. Ah, a few hours of leisure. Madame Luoluota leaned back in her chair and looked lazily at Kornli. I'm hungry. So am I. Kornli looked at Angela. What do you usually eat? Turn right downstairs, there are a few small restaurants. We usually eat there, Luoluota said. But the captain wants us on watch today, so it's dry sandwiches only. They don't deliver. Kornli shook his head. I can talk them into it. 45 minutes later, each of them had a medium rare steak, a whole sea bass stewed with rosemary and other unnameable spices, a large potato cake, fragrant baked bread, round roast beef patties, plus a crisp vegetable salad, all laid out before Madame Luoluota, Kornli, and Madame Angela. What a feast! And hand-ground coffee, perfect, Madame Luoluota exclaimed at the lavish spread. Your treat. Of course. Kornli smiled. Enjoy. 9:30 p.m. Miguel, his right cheek swollen, and Captain Al walked in. Kornli and Luoluoda were happily sipping coffee and black tea. I smell salt roasted sea bass, Miguel sniffed. And hand-ground Dixie coffee and roast beef patties, from the Dixie family restaurant downstairs. Don't they never deliver? Kornli had a word with them, Luoluoda said cheerfully. Starting tonight, the 6 nearby restaurants will deliver to us, no delivery fee. Your face. Luoluoda looked at Miguel's right cheek. How many jumped you? 3. Miguel sat down. Bloody hell, we went out hunting evidence while you lot feasted in the office. At least you were happy in the dreams, Captain Al said. I had to sit through 3 dreams I didn't want to see. They were only dreams, Miguel muttered. Dreams don't mean anything. Yet they didn't affect your performance. Captain Al tilted his head at the ceiling. How did you manage to go from fully dressed to nothing but your underwear in 1 second flat? Miguel truly is gifted. Boss, spare us the details, Madame Luoluoda said. Can we skip straight to the results? They're all problematic, Miguel said grimly. Every single one. Chapter 183, What you see is not the whole truth. Baroness Rihanna Fuller's scar is on her left hand, not her right hand as I remember, and when she gets emotional, she involuntarily calls out her ex-husband's name. This time she didn't, Captain Al said. Not calling out once or twice doesn't mean anything, Lotta expressed a different opinion. But in the more than 30 trysts before, she never failed to call out, Miguel sighed. We've been together for quite some time. I once said that I didn't care about such things at all, and even found it a little stimulating. She has no need to hide these personal habits from me. That counts as evidence. Lotta took a sip of coffee. What about the other 2 ladies? Although Baroness Zoya McCarthy's small black mole on her face has been removed, the mark doesn't match the previous location at all. There's no discomfort in her right index finger. According to her, a very good doctor treated her. And the circular scar on Miss Selena Morton's right arm has completely disappeared, as if it was never there. Moreover, she vehemently denied ever having a scar. Believe me, even a skilled doctor would find it very difficult to treat that kind of circular burn scar, not to mention the pounds needed would far exceed her weekly salary. Miguel poured himself a cup of black tea and drank it in large gulps. Are all 3 different? Has the situation become this serious now? Kornli leaned back in his chair, head bowed, pondering countermeasures. Captain Al didn't speak, just silently pulled out a cigarette. Lotta looked at Kornli, knowing from their previous collaboration that he was someone who excelled at fighting with his mind. Miguel, meanwhile, curled up in his chair, and a few minutes later, soft snores could be heard. Even in his dreams, his spiritual energy consumption today was significant. You 2 should go back. Kornli raised his head. We can only stop here for today. Lotta nodded, stood up, and punched Miguel on the head. Miguel, waking up in a daze, watched Lotta's retreating figure and muttered, I didn't provoke this violent person. She did say she wanted to punch you, and this was light. Kornli stretched out his right hand and tapped his face. This might be because you were slapped 3 times this afternoon. Miguel wobbled out of the squad room. Kornli watched as only he and Captain Al remained in the room, then spread his hands. I want to know how to find high-ranking Deacon Cresta Sesama as soon as possible. Captain Al opened the telegraph machine on the table, tapped a few words on it, and a few minutes later, a note quickly popped out. He's at Tranquility Church. I guess I'll have to work overtime. Kornli finished his coffee. Sometimes I really envy succubi, they can get enough energy by sleeping a few hours a day. Hey, I envy you too. Captain Al followed behind him, and the 2 directly climbed into the coachman's seat of the carriage. A peaceful sleep has been my wish for many years. Tranquility Church, 2nd floor room. Praise the goddess. Cresta Sesama gestured for the 2 to enter his temporary resting room. The room was small, with only a wooden plank bed covered with a mattress, a table, and 2 chairs. On the table was a hand-carved water cup. Praise the goddess. Kornli and Captain Al entered the room and sat down in the chairs. You're so eager to see me, something must have happened. Senior Deacon Crestet sat on the bed, neatly dressed. What exactly is it? Today, Kornli and Captain Al came together, which meant it wasn't something related to the goddess's will. Senior Deacon Crestet, I want to know something very secret. Kornli said in a deep voice. Regarding sealed artifact 1097. Does the church have other sealed artifacts similar to it? As soon as he said this, Al-Hassan's eyes were already stunned. As the captain of the Nighthawks squad, he had the authority to know the names and functions of all sealed artifacts, but he had never heard of the sealed artifact, 1097. After all, this was a Sequence 1 sealed artifact, why had he never heard of it? Sealed artifact 1097, unattended mirror. Cresta sat on the bed, muttering to himself. He could only have learned this from Captain Dunn Smith. The first time we encountered this item was in the report you saw. The first time, which means there was a second time. Cresta pulled open the table drawer and took out a report, handing it to Kornli. He handed it to Kornli first, not me, which means Kornli's status in his heart is far higher than mine, Captain Al thought silently. Whom does your current case involve? Senior Deacon Crestet asked tentatively. You mean, are there any untouchable figures? Kornli raised his head, and Senior Deacon Crestet nodded slightly decisively. George III and Queen Ophelia Augustus. Kornli's mouth uttered a name that made Senior Deacon Crestet's whole body tremble. George III, the current king of the Loan Kingdom. Although the Evernight Goddess Church is the second largest church in the Loan Kingdom and is not afraid of directly confronting the kingdom's nobility, it's still better not to confront them directly if possible. I understand. Senior Deacon Crestet feigned composure and nodded. What do you need me to do? Captain Al trembled all over, listening to the conversation between the two in disbelief. Kornli meant that the king and his queen were involved in this matter, and the situation might be significant. Senior Deacon Crestet meant, I understand, the church will act behind you, and I will also be a member of your operation. If needed, you can directly instruct me. Or rather, directly command. Has Kornli's status already become this high? He wouldn't be the illegitimate son of the 9 archbishops, would he? Or, the illegitimate son of the Evernight Goddess. Considering that the church has existed for more than a century, and the goddess's oracle has always been present, this doesn't seem impossible. Kornli keenly glanced at Senior Deacon Crestet, who realized he seemed to have said something wrong and fell silent. Kornli quickly finished reading the report and handed the entire report to Captain Al-Hassan. You mean, there's more than one 1097, but many. And they all come from one mirror? Kornli asked Senior Deacon Crestet. Chapter 184, Kornli, I have a preliminary idea. I am more inclined to believe that one mirror created other powerful mirrors, Senior Deacon Crestet admitted while sitting on the bed. Like the spread of a disease. Captain Al asked casually, turning to the second page of the document. That's one way to look at it, but as far as I know, only the demonist sect can utilize mirrors. What happens behind the mirrors is only known to the involved parties, Cresta said. The report held by Dunn Smith is the first and only church report we have encountered regarding the man in the mirror to date. Then why are a few lines blacked out? What content is hidden inside? The report was blacked out directly by the person who wrote it. Senior Deacon Crestet spread his hands innocently. After the report was delivered to the Holy Cathedral at the time, we saw the blacked out lines the next morning. When we tried to question him, he had already died in his home. Murder. Or, Kornli thought of a completely impossible fact. The evidence points to suicide. Senior Deacon Crestet stated the fact Kornli had just thought of. He lived alone, the door was locked from the inside, the pistol used for suicide was held in his dominant right hand, and the windows were closed. Damn it, how could this be? Your 1097 is actually numbered 10974. It is the fourth mirror we have discovered. This information is only known to bishops of the 7 great churches or the heads of relevant Beander teams. And now you're telling me that there might be a bunch of men in the mirror, in Backlund. That's truly a headache. Captain Al will be responsible for all actions concerning this case. Senior Deacon Crestet stood up. I will go to the other churches to check for similar cases. If there is hope, I will send the case files to the team station. Yes, Your Excellency Cresta. Captain Al stood up and nodded heavily. You two should rest, it's very late. Cresta slightly moved the index finger of his right hand, and the door slowly opened. Captain Al and Kornli walked out of the Tranquility Church and exchanged glances. How do you intend to handle this? Captain Al spoke first, raising his right hand to stop Kornli's modest gesture. Senior Deacon Crestet explicitly named me to handle this case, but he actually wants you to handle it. Furthermore, from your conversation just now, I can sense that there are other things you two are hiding from me. I only want to know one thing: will the things you are hiding negatively affect my team? Kornli calmly looked at Captain Al. This was an old man as stubborn as Captain Dunn, loyal to the church, loyal to his team, and even more passionate about his job. Not far diagonally opposite the Tranquility Church, the sign for The Last Whale, a Toscat-style seafood restaurant, was still flickering. To be able to open a restaurant opposite the Tranquility Church, their boss and kitchen staff must have been inspected several times by the church personnel. Kornli led Captain Al inside, casually ordered a few seafood dishes and 2 glasses of coconut juice, and sat down in the innermost private room. A simple seafood feast can't shut up. Before Captain Al could finish speaking, Kornli gently patted his belt. The goddess sword flew out from his waist, hovered in front of him for a moment, and then flew back into Kornli's belt. The goddess sword was Senior Deacon Crestet's personal weapon, and the office next to Captain Al's was one of the offices Cresta used to stay in year-round, so he was extremely familiar with this weapon. You. Captain Al stared dumbfounded at Kornli's action. Senior Deacon Crestet's goddess sword. It is the goddess sword. However, its surname is now White. Kornli nodded. The drinks and seafood were delivered in sequence. The boss here also kindly gave each of them a grilled sandwich with banana slices, before enthusiastically closing the door. I have been assigned a special mission by the goddess, Kornli whispered. The goddess sword is a weapon the goddess lent to me. I understand. Captain Al used his knife and fork to cut the small roasted shark in front of him in half. Does this mission require my help? Not for now. Kornli nodded. When I don't have a special mission, I am still a member of the team. Phew. Captain Al took a deep breath. I thought you were the goddess's bastard son. Quote. No, but our relationship seems even closer than that. The private room door opened. The boss of The Last Whale handed over 2 large bags containing Kornli's dinner. You enjoy your meal, Captain. I'm heading home now. Kornli finished his coconut juice and nodded. Captain Al waved his hand, concentrating on the plate of oysters in front of him, which were drenched in lemon juice. Hello, take me to 42 Gilbert Street. Kornli hailed a private carriage and arrived at Klein's new home again after a day's absence. Kornli, why are you here? Klein opened the door, looking at Kornli's tired face. Something happened. Kornli handed over the 2 servings of food. I hope you at least have a stool for me here. Since they were trusted allies, Klein led Kornli to the living room. Over black tea and seafood, the two discussed the events of the day. You mean, if George III knew about the existence of the man in the mirror, he would have known 20 years ago. Klein's expression changed. As a monarch, no matter how broad-minded, he couldn't possibly allow his future wife to be with other men before the wedding, Kornli said. Unless the woman he married was already a man in the mirror. Strictly speaking, the man in the mirror and the original body should be 2 completely different people, so the issue of chastity is irrelevant. In other words, Empress Ophelia has been a man in the mirror for over 20 years. This can also be corroborated by the fact that she and Viscount Darren Garcia have never met since the wedding, Kornli said. The more he thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. What does this count as? An exchange of interests, or an exchange of bloodline? Klein chewed vigorously on the last piece of fried calamari ring, pondering. He is already the greatest politician in the Loan Kingdom. What else could he want? A heaven on earth, Kornli silently thought to himself. I came here this time to ask for leave, regarding tomorrow's gathering. Kornli said. And for Tuesday's Sea God sacrifice, I have a preliminary idea. Chapter 185, The Mystery Priors, Secret Peering. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Kornli arrived at the team's station on time. After greeting Miss Angela at the door, he walked into the team office and was surprised to see Madame Lotta, who was already half asleep. The boss isn't here. Madame Lotta heard Kornli's movement, raised her head, and greeted him. He already went to the bank with Miguel. Madame Lotta propped herself up on the desk with both hands, rolling from the left side to the right like a koala, seemingly contemplating which hand to lean on would make it easier to fall asleep. No, we're back already. Captain Al-Hassan and Miguel walked back into the office, the latter holding a thick stack of documents. This is the list of items that might be inside the vault, compiled by Steve Nelson over a day and a night, Captain Al-Hassan said, pointing at the documents. I suppose this incident has caused quite a stir. Indeed. Miguel placed a cup of coffee in front of Madame Lotta. Her nose twitched a few times, and when she realized the coffee was there, her eyes immediately lit up. She picked up the cup like an exceptional lady and began sipping it slowly. The Backlund Post, the Backlund Daily News, the LotM Weekly, put it this way: if the front page headline today isn't the Backlund City Bank robbery, the editor-in-chief of that newspaper will be immediately fired by the board of directors, Captain Al-Hassan said. Getting back to the main topic, Steve Nelson compiled a lot of things that might have been in the vault. In an hour, a true mysticologist will come to the team and help us track down the whereabouts of these items. Oh, it really is quite embarrassing that the team has neither a seer nor a mystery prior. Kornli pointed at Miguel. Don't detectives have mystical abilities? We specialize in deduction and rituals. We are more like beyonders who make judgments based on existing real-world knowledge. When it comes to mysticism, our mastery speed isn't as fast as a seer's, Miguel said. It takes me a lot of time to build the corresponding framework in my brain before I can slowly master these things. This is completely incompatible with my temperament. Incompatible with your temperament? You're probably just very lazy, Kornli muttered inwardly as he picked up the coffee in front of him. Boss, a young man is here to see you. Miss Angela knocked on the door, and behind her walked in a young man wearing the light yellow robes of the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. Looking at the four people in the room, he drew the triangular holy emblem across his chest with his right hand. May steam be above. I am Navi Ross of the Machinery Hivemind team in the South Borough, a Sequence 9 mystery prior. Praise the goddess. I am Captain Al-Hassan. Captain Thorne Ashton told you what you need to do, right? Captain Al-Hassan stood up, drew the four-pointed star across his chest, and shook hands with Navi. Not at all. Navi Ross shook his head repeatedly, straightening up and mimicking Captain Thorne's tone. 9 o'clock in the morning, go to the second floor of 40 Kensal Street, find Captain Al-Hassan, and follow his instructions. That's it. The deep Loan language, spoken with a southern accent, popped out of his mouth, making the other four people in the room unable to help but laugh. In fact, you are the product of losing a card game, valued at £1.05. Captain Al-Hassan smiled, pulled over the dejected Navi, and took out several drawings from the documents depicting necklaces, bracelets, rings, and other seemingly valuable items. You want me to divine the location of these items? Navi Ross quickly understood Captain Al-Hassan's intention. These are the things stolen from the Backlund City Bank vaults. It should be, Kornli said. We need you to find the location of these items through a ritual, divination, or whatever method you have. All right. Navi Ross nodded. He glanced around, reached up to take down the Backlund map from the wall, pulled a pendulum from his pocket, and handed it to Madame Lotta. Madam, please hold this for me. Okay, what do I need to do? Lotta asked curiously, holding the bronze pendulum with both hands, unsure of what to do. Navi took a thread from his robe, tied it to the pendulum, then lightly pricked his little finger and carefully smeared the drawn blood onto the pendulum. I'm starting now. Navi looked at the four people. The room might get very cold. His left hand gently pressed down on the stack of white paper. The room instantly became very cold. Kornli could feel his spirituality constantly sketching the shapes of the jewelry, bracelets, and rings onto the paper. Behind him, a massive single eye appeared again, scanning everyone in the room with icy gaze before slowly closing once more. Navi Ross's right hand held the thread of the pendulum, hovering over the map. The pendulum seemed to receive a signal and rapidly moved across the map, guiding Navi's right hand. South Borough, North Borough, East Borough, Harbor District. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the position of the pendulum. With a swoosh, the pendulum stabbed into a spot on the map. Navi Ross's eyes were tightly shut, his eyelids constantly twitching, and his entire body trembled slightly. Cold, dark, underground. Navi Ross muttered to himself. I can hear the sound of waves. There are 2 or 3 people nearby, no, at least 4. Clang, clang. Harder, damn it, harder. Quote. Ah. Navi Ross spat out a mouthful of blood and fell backward onto the floor. Al-Hassan stepped forward, catching his shoulders the moment he fell, and helped him sit down in his chair. My secret peering was discovered. The other party mistook me for a possessing vengeful spirit and accidentally killed one of their own, and they are currently opening the various vaults to take out the contents. Navi took the coffee Lotta handed him, took a sip to calm himself, and gave Lotta a grateful smile. The vaults are very sturdy. They haven't opened many, and their tools are only simple chisels and hammers, so the speed isn't fast. Clang, clang sounds. Kornli became thoughtful. Boss, the pendulum pointed to the vicinity of Carlton Street in the Harbor District, Miguel said. Thank you, your mission was completed very well. Captain Al-Hassan reached out and shook hands with Navi Ross. I will tell my captain that my worth is higher than 1 pound and 5 sol. Navi Ross smiled and stood up. Good luck to you all. Miguel, you and Lotta go to the police station and summon 2 teams. Bring pistols and rapiers. Even though we have the location, we still need a quick search, Captain Al-Hassan said. Move out. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 186. This place actually is. Nearly an hour later, the entire squad, along with 2 teams of 12 constables, gathered at the intersection of Carlton Street in the Harbor District. Each of you takes 3 constables and begins searching the houses on both sides of the street, Captain Al said. They're most likely in the basement, meaning there might be a lookout on the ground floor. Watch for anyone behind the curtains in the living room, Captain Al added. All the officers nodded. They knew that in situations like this they could only play a supporting role. When real danger came, it was these beyonders who were needed. They checked house after house and soon reached the end of the road. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, we're the police. One of Kornli's constables rapped on the door of No. 1 Carlton Street. A tiny old lady in pale purple house clothes opened it trembling, her face full of surprise. Good morning, officer. What can I do for you? Is anyone else at home? The constable pulled out a pen and a small notebook and began to jot with theatrical diligence. Yes, no, just me. The old woman answered in fright. Ever since that old devil left, I've been here alone. Have you heard any unusual noises lately? Kornli studied her every move, her hands shook involuntarily, as if even thinking had become exhausting. No, the old lady shook her head. It's very quiet here, isn't it? Very quiet. Quote. Very quiet. This was the Harbor District, and behind this very house lay a small pier where fishing boats could dock. A pier, the sound of water, the sound of waves. Is there anything else, officer? The old woman picked up a ball of yarn with her right hand. I still have to sit here and wait for that old devil to come home. Kornli nodded. One last question, dear lady. How long has your husband been gone? With his right forefinger he tapped downward once. The old woman gave a slight nod and 2 cloudy tears rolled from the corners of her eyes. This was the place. Kornli drew the thorn of ash. The constable at the rear, seeing the gesture, pulled the police whistle from his pocket and blew it with all his might. Peep, peep, peep. It was the emergency call. Every officer hearing it realized they had found what they sought. Kornli made a downward gesture to Captain Al, who was running over, signaling the targets were in this house's basement, and spoke in dragon language. Disappear. His body slowly dissolved into thin threads before everyone's eyes, as though erased by a rubber. The bodies of the surrounding constables and the old woman became fist-sized fireballs drifting in midair. He looked downstairs. 3 double-sized fireballs passed through space into his eyes, 2 of them at the left and right of the stairway, apparently aware their hideout was exposed. In the corner crouched another person, the flame representing his life flickered, about to go out. That should be the old lady's husband. At a single thought, a downward path appeared beneath Kornli's feet. He followed it straight through the first and second floorboards into the basement. In a corner of the basement he quietly revealed himself. In front of him a man knelt on the ground, hurriedly stuffing items from opened safes into a cloth sack. The entire right-hand wall was lined with safes embedded in thick granite, as though they had grown there. 8 safes on the second row had been pried open, a 9th was damaged but its contents still intact. In the corner sat an old man, his face covered in blood, his left eye apparently blind. Seeing Kornli appear, his remaining right eye widened as if to speak. Kornli clamped a hand over his mouth and, with his left, drew 2 palm-sized slumber charms from the small of his back, tossing them at the feet of the 2 men by the stairs. Night. He calmly spoke Hermes' language again, using his spirituality to detonate the 2 charms. While the Hermes word left his lips, the thorn of ash in his right hand was already aimed at the flustered youth who, hearing the sound, was clumsily drawing a pistol. PFF'd. The silent bullet from the thorn of ash struck his wrist. Kornli fired again, both wrists pierced. The youth screamed curses and was pinned beneath Kornli's foot, all power to resist gone. Footsteps echoed from the stairway. Kornli shouted upward, "Area secure. Captain, you and Madame Luoluo to come down." Something was definitely wrong. He felt as if he were dealing with mere ordinary people. Captain Al was first down. Seeing 2 men unconscious and 1 pinned, hands bleeding, he frowned. This easy. They seem to be ordinary people, Captain. Kornli shook his head. This isn't right. Save me, save. In the corner the old man, seeing Captain Al in his detective uniform, mustered a cry for help. Bring a few men, take these 2 upstairs and the homeowners outside, I still have questions for them later. Captain Al waved over 2 constables to help the old man upstairs. No, no, this is absolutely wrong. Kornli restlessly paced the room. Too smooth. None of them are beyonders, not one of the 3. He slammed a fist into the wall. Ripples spread across it, making him frown. Something in this room was off. Crack. The scene before his eyes shattered like a huge pane of glass, fragmenting into shards. Kornli's vision blurred. They were all still outside the door, the constable's right hand just raised, not yet knocking. A dream. He had been pulled into a dream. Kornli's right hand brushed his waist. The 2 slumber charms he had just used still lay safe in their belt clips. Hey! Kornli smiled. Swiftly he caught the constable's knocking hand, signaled the others to retreat, and blew his whistle. Captain Al, Lotta and Miguel ran over. Kornli stepped back and whispered 2 sentences in the captain's ear. Understood. Captain Al smiled, pressed his right forefinger to his brow and half closed his eyes. Ah! A deep, furious male roar sounded from below. Captain Al opened his eyes. If you please, dear Lotta. Chapter 187. Everything here, please keep it confidential. Lotta nodded, stepped forward, and kicked the door lock with force. The heavy, powerful kick caused her to sink in completely. No one is on the first floor inside. Lotta stepped her remaining half-foot into the doorway, cautiously surveyed the area, then opened the door, or rather, the remaining part of it, allowing the rest of the team to enter. Part of my ability has been exposed, Kornli said. If possible. It's all right, their nightmare's strength has already been exposed. You did well. Captain Al patted Miguel's shoulder. The space inside is cramped, it's not suitable for rapiers. Let me. Miguel pulled a black glove from his lower back and put it on his left hand, striding behind Lotta. The 4 of you guard the front door, the rest of you go around to the back of the house and watch for possible back doors and windows. Captain Al quickly assigned tasks to the other police officers, then followed Kornli into the house. Madame Lotta gently pushed open the door to the basement. 2 revolver bullets fired upwards from below with a bang bang. Madame Lotta tilted her head slightly, slung her double-barreled shotgun across her lower back, and with a stylish flourish, drew 2 large men's revolvers from her lower back. The skin beneath her eyes turned white. Hey! Miguel reached out to grab Lotta's clothes but missed, only able to watch regretfully as Lotta strode downwards, flames occasionally spitting from the revolvers in her hands, covering the people behind her. I know you're not afraid of bullets, but couldn't you? Miguel complained, following closely behind her, his left hand with the black glove slowly extending forward, seemingly probing for something. Bang! Bang! A series of urgent gunshots came from outside the house. There was a back door here, and someone wanted to escape from inside, but was blocked by the police at the entrance. This thought simultaneously flashed through everyone's minds. Lotta accelerated down the stairs, her body surging forward. Her right knee struck a man who was inserting bullets into a revolver cylinder one by one, knocking him directly onto the dirt-covered red bricks. Behind him, a man in a black trench coat twitched his face as he extended his right hand towards the team members, seemingly wanting to drag everyone into a dream. Anticore Sudoku and its 172 solutions. Miguel roared, and a white light flashed from the index finger of the black glove on his left hand, shooting straight into the opponent's head. The man in the black trench coat showed a bewildered expression on his face and fainted without a sound. HMPH, you wouldn't understand the greatness of knowledge. Miguel put away his glove, looking at the room from behind LotM. On the left wall, the Backlund bank vault that Kornli had just seen was embedded. 7 of them had already been pried open, and they were empty. Aside from the 2 who had just fallen, the room was empty. So what was with the police officers firing outside just now? The wall opposite them slowly slid open. LotM immediately raised the revolvers in both hands, aiming directly at the wall with the fake door. Inside were the 2 police officers who had been working with them just now. Seeing LotM and Kornli, they immediately raised their hands to signal they were on their side. What happened just now? Captain Al asked. A guy pushed the door open from here and jumped directly into the water. We shot at him, but we probably didn't hit him, the leading police officer said. He wasn't wearing a hat, but from his appearance, he bore some resemblance to the portrait you gave us. Damn it, he got away. LotM slammed her fist heavily onto the safe. A corner of the struck safe immediately broke open, revealing an antique jewelry box inside. You two, go to Backlund City Bank and find Mr. Steve Nelson, the president. Have him bring a few people here. We'll wait here. Captain Al and Kornli emerged from the secret door, looking at the dock less than 3 meters away, shaking their heads helplessly. This fellow really chose an excellent hiding and escape location. What's next? Kornli asked. Boss. In Backlund, many things require luck. Captain Al took out a rolled cigarette and offered one to Kornli. After things here are settled, the greatest hope of finding that guy is to continue troubling Mr. Navi Ross. That's the most likely possibility, but if that person is immune to divination, then it won't be much fun. An hour later, Steve Nelson jumped out of the carriage at the entrance and, despite everyone's attempts to stop him, rushed into the basement. Seeing most of the safes still intact, he burst into tears. Found it, that's great, he murmured to himself. What about the 7 damaged safes? Captain Al asked. Backlund City Bank should still be able to compensate for the contents, but as for memories. Steve glanced at Miguel's angry eyes. Everything is negotiable, dear Mr. Miguel. So, the rest is a matter of time. How do you plan to deal with this safe? Captain Al asked again. This thing weighs at least several tons. When I came, I already asked someone to find a few engineers from the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. They will be responsible for dismantling these safes into portable parts without damaging the contents inside, and then we will reassemble them. Steve rubbed his hands, looking confident, and gave everyone a hearty hug. Thank you, I don't know how to thank you. You found the safe in just 1 day, minimizing our losses. I will definitely announce this matter in all newspapers. No, if you want to thank us, a donation will suffice. Do not disclose our information in any newspaper, especially personal information and our affiliated church, Kornli said sternly. Your case is over, but for us, the real case has just begun. Mr. Steve Nelson looked at Captain Al in surprise, who nodded heavily, indicating that Kornli's words were correct. I understand. Then, a private donation will be on your desk on time tomorrow, Mr. Steve Nelson promised with a nod. Captain Al left Miguel and LotM at the scene, taking Kornli to the Machinery Hivemind team station in the Southern District, the Rock and Mineral Research Center of the God of Steam and Machinery. Chapter 188, Which of you is the real one? Does every squad station in Backlund have a different name? Kornli asked curiously, his right hand stroking the squad's nameplate, which was pieced together from gears and screws. Those curious Backlunders thought it was some kind of museum when they first saw our sign. Our receptionist, Miss Ruth, turns away several locals who want to buy tickets and visit every week, as well as passing tourists. Navi Ross walked over and shook hands with Captain Al. Are you here for me or the captain? If you're looking for the captain, you'll have to wait a while, they're having fun at the shooting range downstairs. No need, I heard a familiar voice. A man with graying hair on the sides and a bald spot in the middle walked in. He wore a beige robe and, like Madame Luoluota, carried a double-barreled shotgun on his back. Judging by his familiar tone with Captain Al, He must be the captain of this machinery hivemind squad, Thorn Ashton. By steam, Al Hassan, what are you doing here again? Thorn Ashton bumped fists with Captain Al, his brow furrowing slightly. Didn't I pay my debt this morning? Navi Ross rolled his eyes, unsure if he was depressed about being the excuse for debt repayment or sad about his worth of £1.05. Praise the goddess, you only paid last week's debt. The accumulated debt from before still has. Captain Al pulled a small notebook from his clothes and flipped to the last page. Ah, right, there's still £3.12 unpaid. You actually used a pen to record our gambling debts from card games. Thorn Ashton looked at Al Hassan with a mix of exasperation and amusement. Once I realized you old fellows were taking advantage of my forgetfulness to often not pay back money, I started recording everything. A smile appeared at the corner of Captain Al's mouth. I'm just forgetful, but I have a good habit. This time's rental fee offsets £2, and so will it be from now on. Thorn Ashton pushed Navi Ross forward. The price has gone up. Kornli extended his right fist and bumped it with Navi Ross's. Congratulations, your worth has increased. It's probably too late for me to leave the captain now. Navi Ross held his head in his hands in self-abandonment, shook it, and then looked up again. Was the prediction I made a few hours ago accurate? The results were good, but the most important one among them, named Franz, escaped. We caught 2 of them and found the stolen safe, but some items are still missing from it, Kornli said. It's not that we didn't think about looking for Franz from the start, but as a Beyonder squad, our most important job is to eliminate the influence of Beyonders on ordinary residents. At the time, the impact of finding the safe was clearly greater than finding a fellow like Franz. Kornli guessed Navi Ross's question and explained it to him. Indeed. Captain Al nodded in agreement. All the safes of a major bank being stolen would definitely be sensational news across the country. Sensational, such a big effect. Kornli felt a hint of foreboding in his heart. Navi Ross took the portrait of Franz and examined it carefully. I must tell you, this guy's looks are a bit ordinary, the search might not be very effective. I will use the method of blood tracking. He took a large map of Backlund from the office desk and made the gesture for Eye of Secrets with both hands in front of his chest. Please reveal the current location of the man named Franz, whose face matches this portrait. The temperature in the office suddenly dropped. Although Kornli hadn't activated spirit vision, he knew that Navi Ross was using the Eye of Secrets again. Navi Ross lightly ran his right thumbnail over his pinky, letting a drop of fresh blood fall onto the map. That round drop of blood did not seep into the map as Kornli expected in the cold air. Instead, it spun rapidly on top of the map, faster and faster. With a snap, it split in the air into 3 smaller blood spheres as if they were alive, penetrating into 3 corners of the map like needles. There are 3 in total. One of them disappeared quickly after penetrating the paper map. Kornli widened his eyes, carefully recording the location where that blood sphere had seeped in. The temperature in the room returned to normal. A thick layer of cold sweat broke out on Navi Ross's face. He opened his eyes and looked at the 2 different colored marks on the map, looking confused. Navi Ross raised his hands high. Strange, why are there 2 points? This spell has never failed before. I believe you. Kornli nodded. I might have guessed what's going on. You're talking in riddles and don't plan to tell us what's happening. Thorn Ashton looked at Kornli, then at Al Hassan again. Thank you for the £2. Captain Al and Kornli left the Rock and Mineral Research Center with the map. The carriage slowly started, and Captain Al looked at Kornli impatiently. What exactly is going on? We might have encountered a thorny problem. Kornli turned the carriage and slowly stopped by the roadside. Give me your gloves, Captain. Al, at a loss, pulled his gloves from his pocket and handed them to Kornli. Let's assume the glove on the left is the normal Franz, and the one on the right is the man in the mirror, Franz. Kornli placed the 2 gloves facing each other. The man in the mirror will try every possible way to kill the original and then take his place in this world. But, if the original is hard to kill, and during the assassination attempt, the original finds a way, for example, by preparing a potion and advancing to become a Beyonder of the next stage. In this way, with the thinking patterns of the original and the man in the mirror being exactly the same, if the murderer is indeed the unwinged angel, as we suspect, then his original self is now a serial killer. In this case, the man in the mirror cannot kill the original, and a brief state of peace is reached between the two. Huh. Al-Hassan was stunned. How do you know? My judgment stems from the fact that one of the 3 drops of blood just disappeared, which makes me think of something. Kornli said with a serious expression. The next sequence name for the unwinged angel is serial killer, and it possesses the ability to be immune to divination and tracking. The disappearance of the blood just now was the moment he finished taking the potion and became a sequence 7 serial killer, interfering with the simple ritual of blood tracking. Al-Hassan's brow furrowed. This was truly a headache-inducing problem. Chapter 189 Dozens of souls and even more corpses. According to what you said, how do you explain the other guy? He used a mystical item. My guess is that it solidified the power of the man in the mirror, or misled a mirror, letting him create another man in the mirror, then used his own strength to force both of his mirror men to obey his orders, Kornli speculated. The man in the mirror has to kill the original, but if he has to tail the original, he might feel unwilling and other negative emotions. Kornli spread his hands toward Captain Al. Just my guess. So, torn between those two feelings, they can only follow the original and accept his orders. Captain Al's face darkened. He took the reins and lashed the horses. Giddy up. Sometimes you really know how to ruin the mood, he muttered, apparently still turning it over. First stop. Number 10, Hudson Street, Sherwood Borough. The address was a small white 2-story house with no front yard. Weeds rioted across its lawn, while next door at number 12 the grass was trimmed as neatly as every other house on the street. You're from Sherwood Police, wonderful. My complaint's finally been answered. An old man sunning himself on the adjacent lawn while reading a newspaper shuffled over, grumbling. This family hasn't tidied up in ages. Lately there's been a rotten stench coming from inside. I don't know, he rattled on, plainly annoyed that No 10's owners ignored the state of their property. Rotting. Kornli sniffed. Sure enough, a putrid smell laced with a faint metallic tang of blood. He shot Al-Hassan a warning look. The captain nodded and stepped toward the old man. Sherwood Police appreciate your help, sir, but please step back. He eased the neighbor back to his chair. Seconds later gentle snores rose from it. The good neighbor was asleep. He'll nap for a while. Captain Al looked at Kornli. I'll scan the house first. He touched his brow with his right forefinger, eyes closing briefly. When they opened again, no one inside, but something feels very wrong. There seem to be many spirits present. Damn it. Kornli instantly thought of one possibility. Then we go in the front. Kornli walked up and shoved the door, locked. He pulled a dagger from the small of his back, slipped it into the lock, twisted, and the door swung open. A coat rack and narrow passage lay ahead, leading straight to the rear kitchen. On the right, the parlor. On the left, a staircase barely wide enough for one person. A reek of rot and gore rolled out, nearly knocking Kornli off his feet. He swore that even a morgue packed with corpses smelled like pure oxygen compared with this place. Not a few souls, more than a dozen spirits together could give off such a grim aura. Al-Hassan's face was gloomy. He drew a vial from his pocket, tilted drops into each eye, closed them, then opened them again. In his vision a dozen spirits hovered in the air, staring at him and Kornli with lifeless eyes. The spirit on the left lacked legs, the one beside him had a gaping hole through his chest, the one behind had half a skull, probably killed by a large caliber gun, the farthest right trailed his own entrails, eyes vacant, spinning on the spot. Can any of you understand me? Al-Hassan asked in the Hermes language. The spirits gazed blankly. The little girl drifted over and gave Al a slight nod. Where are your bodies? Al watched the girl point downward, then toward the parlor, the kitchen, and the space beneath the stairs. In the walls, the basement, under the stairs, everywhere. Al nodded, stepped back onto the road, raised his detective badge high, and stopped the nearest carriage, ordering the driver. Straight to Severa's field, tell them to send every officer and coroner they've got. All of them. He shoved his badge into the driver's hand, urging him to hurry, voice low and tightly controlled. What's happened, boss? Kornli asked. There are at least dozens of corpses in this house. That Franz bastard has killed many people, many. Captain Al slammed a fist into the wooden rail by the gate, smashing it to pieces. That scum. Kornli's expression didn't change. He stepped back 2 paces, scanning the surroundings, automatically taking responsibility for securing the scene. Receiving word that Al Hassan's detective badge was at the scene, the station wasted no time. 4 carriages plus a white coroner's van raced over. Detective Charn leapt down, stepped inside, and the stench of long-accumulated corpses sent him stumbling back out. "Never smelled anything like that in my life," he muttered, and promptly ordered officers to cordon off front and back. No one alive inside. Now it was Coroner Valentin Hodgson's show. Coroner Valentin entered with his 2 assistants. Though seasoned, the thick reek of decay hit him at once and told him this was bad. Without extra hands, just the 3 of them would need at least a week to catalog every corpse. "Detective Charn, I need help." Valentin took the crow beak mask his assistant offered. The pouch at its tip held herbs that filtered the toxic air. "Please notify the other stations. To finish the body count within a day I'll need at least 2 more colleagues and their assistants. Also, the upstairs odor is far worse. Apart from closed windows, I detect fresher, stronger blood, likely a recent corpse up there." He handed Zan another crowbeak mask. "This will keep you from passing out before you reach the 2nd floor." Zan donned the mask and hurried up. 10 minutes later he ran back down to Kornli and Captain Al, who were using tobacco to blunt the stench. "Detective, I believe we've found one of the people from the sketch you gave us the day before yesterday." Chapter 193 Franz's, one already dead. At Captain Al's insistence, the coroner Valentin handed the raven mask of the other assistant to him, then followed Kornli White to the 2nd floor. On the bed in the upstairs bedroom, Franz's face appeared before the 3 of them. He wore an ordinary white shirt. 2 wounds, deep enough to show bone, gaped in his chest, and the sheet beneath him was soaked in blood. The bedroom was sparsely furnished, just the sheets and a single quilt. Kornli opened the bedside cabinet and pulled out the drawer. A few sets of clothes and socks, nothing else. Coroner Valentin knotted his scarf tight across his face, pressed a hand to his own chest, then, without hesitation, plunged the index finger of his left hand into the wound, probing the edges, brows locked in a frown. "Such a clean cut." The coroner murmured to himself. Kornli sketched a circle in the air with his left hand, signaling Captain Al to search for Franz's soul nearby. The captain slowly shook his head. "I don't sense the Beander characteristic in him, nor any trace of a soul in the vicinity." "Come outside with me." Valentin opened the window. A brisk wind swept in, clearing the room's stale, bloody air. The 3 returned downstairs. Valentin rubbed the stubble on his chin, as if weighing how to answer the questions from Captain Al and Kornli. "The cause of death is simple, those 2 wounds bled him out. But the weapon is baffling. It looks like," Valentin hunted for the right word, then said carefully, "a long bread knife." "You mean the harmless kind we use to spread butter and jam?" Al Hassan's brows arched in disbelief. "The wounds are over the heart and the spleen. I believe the spleen strike came first, robbing him of the strength to resist. The second, to the heart, killed him outright." Valentin glanced at Kornli. "With your permission, I'll demonstrate." Before Kornli could answer, Valentin's right forefinger and middle finger pressed together and jabbed hard at his spleen. Kornli's hands twitched involuntarily, his vision dimmed, and he steadied himself against the railing. Only after 3 seconds did his sight return. "I get your point." He drew 2 sharp breaths. "Captain, without physical enhancement, an ordinary person couldn't withstand that blow, even from a bread knife. The follow-up strike was precise, severing the vessels on both sides of the heart. Most of the blood on the bed came from there. Time of death, within 3 hours. Valentin stripped off his gloves and asked his assistant for a fresh pair. "Without an autopsy, that's all I can give you, more may surface afterward." "Thank you." Captain Al nodded, drew Kornli aside, and whispered, "I tried to reach his soul, but there isn't one in this house. If he died less than 3 hours ago, his soul should still be here to question." Kornli nodded, gaze drifting to a house about 180 meters away. A familiar face flashed past its side. It was Franz, the 2nd Franz, the one who had likely killed the original in the bedroom, or the man in the mirror. Their eyes met for an instant. The 2nd Franz smiled in satisfaction, then turned and walked behind the house. Kornli sprinted after him. 180 meters took him more than 7 seconds. When he reached the spot, no one was there. "Hey, what happened?" Captain Al panted up behind him. You see a ghost. I saw the exact same face, Kornli said. The one we just saw upstairs. So the man in the mirror might indeed exist, and from that smile, he was probably the original. Captain, we've still got 2 places to check, Kornli said. Captain Al commandeered 4 constables to follow in another carriage. One address was 14 Liddell Street, door 3, North Borough, a cramped room for transient laborers, littered with stale black bread and butter, rats darting in the corners. The other was 28 Constant Street, Bridge Borough, a workers' tenement that looked tidy, but the 3 worn shirts and identical canvas trousers in the wardrobe spoke of poverty. Damn it, I see it now, Kornli exclaimed. North Borough 14-3 is the second man in the mirror's lodging, Constance 28 is the first's. Captain Al pondered. Don't tell me you worked that out from the state of their rooms. Exactly, Captain, Kornli said. The first man in the mirror had some money, probably from the original. If the original wanted a helper, he'd have to provide basic means. The second man in the mirror was meant to take the blame. In fact, I suspect the Franz who just died was that second man in the mirror. The first man in the mirror might have been an accidental byproduct, or a test subject. But Franz's second man in the mirror was a hoax, a scheme Franz himself orchestrated. He learned about the experiment and wanted out. Under exceptional observation, every possibility assembled, intersected, and cross-checked, converging on a single likely truth. Someone in Backlund was quietly testing something behind the scenes. Captain, don't forget, we still haven't found that mirror, and we have no idea what Mr. Steve Nelson lost in those 8 safes, Kornli reminded him. Captain Al's head suddenly felt very, very large. Chapter 191, What a terrifying reality. Franz's original self killed the duplicate of the man in the mirror. If we follow your theory where A duplicates B and B duplicates C, then the one who died now is C. A brought C to his residence, then killed C, faking the phenomenon that A had already died. Could it be just for simple venting? Captain Al had already grasped what Kornli was trying to express, but he completely failed to understand the motive behind it. You two, go visit the nearby residence. Inquire about Franz, or this person's name, everything related to him. Any bit of information is very important to us. If necessary, you can continue to call for more people from the nearby police station, Captain Al instructed the 2 officers still following behind him. Yes, detective, the 2 officers hurriedly stood at attention and saluted. Kornli and Captain Al returned to the squad's headquarters by carriage. Kornli took several sheets of white paper from the table and began writing and drawing on them. What do we know? Kornli's right hand unconsciously drew a circle on the white paper, then branched out from it. Queen Ophelia. Her family is a branch of the Night Emperor, Truncest. She carries the Truncest bloodline in her body. She is already dead, the one in the palace now is her duplicate. George III married her duplicate and successfully obtained the Truncest bloodline. Wait, the Truncest bloodline, this should be a very hidden clue. The original Ophelia's love letters. Order. This pathway is held by the Castia family, and the latter controls the Fainapotter kingdom. If it's as I think, then why did Franz kill C and expose his residence at this time? Could it be simply to make the police track his whereabouts? Tracking requires a huge amount of manpower, which can distract attention from other areas. For example, the sea god sacrifice being held tomorrow. Wait, those love letters are the only things that can prove Ophelia is the original Ophelia. Any Ophelia, as long as she gets those love letters, can prove she is the real Ophelia. To prove she possesses the Truncest bloodline. My God, I seem to have figured out a lot of things. Dong, dong, dong. The wall clock struck 13 times. Kornli stood up. Boss, I need to take the afternoon off. What have you figured out? Al Hassan didn't look up, silently smoking a cigarette as he asked the question. In the next few hours, we probably won't be able to get any answers. The event should take place at tomorrow's sea god sacrifice celebration, Kornli said. I need a few hours to arrange some activities and organize personnel. Kornli said. If I'm not mistaken, I'll be back before 6 in the evening to give you some answers. Kornli spread his hands. Sorry, the fact that I can come up with some answers now already makes me a genius. 6 o'clock. Captain Al glanced at the clock. Fine, I understand. The three of us will wait for you here. If it's convenient, call Senior Deacon Crested as well. I believe he would be very interested in hearing an interesting anecdote. Are you sure it's an interesting anecdote? Captain Al muttered, watching Kornli walk out of the room and rush downstairs as fast as possible. Knock knock knock. Klein's door was pounded on. In the detective consultation room converted from the living room, Klein, who was lying down reading a newspaper, looked up. The image of Kornli carrying 6 food boxes automatically surfaced in his mind. Why is he here so early? Didn't we agree to have a big meal at his place tonight? Klein opened the door with a surprised expression. Kornli, you're here so early. Sorry, I'm afraid there's no time to make the big plate chicken tonight. Kornli walked in carrying 6 huge food boxes and spread them out on the table. I haven't had lunch yet either. Together. What's the matter? Klein poured 2 cups of water, brewed some black tea, and handed 1 cup to Kornli. You seem very tense. You remember what I told you about the man in the mirror, right? Kornli used a fork to pick up a piece of grilled fish and stuffed it into his mouth, speaking indistinctly. Then, what about a man in the mirror, of a man in the mirror? Ah, what kind of question is Kornli asking? Klein reached out to feel Kornli's forehead. Have you gone crazy? You need to go to a psychiatric hospital for a checkup. No, what I'm telling you is what has happened to us in the last few days. Kornli rolled his eyes. It all starts from when we parted ways 2 days ago. Over the delicious food on the table, Kornli revealed all the facts to Klein. You suspect, it's Queen Ophelia's doing. That everything is just to prove one thing. Klein leaned back. This inference is a bit too unexpected. I have to say, she is the most suspicious, Kornli pondered. Only her original self knows the clues to those love letters, and also knows that after she learned about her bloodline, she wanted to flee the Loan Kingdom. Why flee? Klein asked, puzzled. The War of the 4 Sovereigns, and another ridiculous reason I can think of. Kornli sighed. At least the reason regarding the War of the 4 Sovereigns can't be wrong. The War of the 4 Sovereigns, this was a subject every historian wanted to study thoroughly. Why death fell back then, and what the reason was for the fall of the Truncest ancestor, these were questions all historians were curious about. If that's the reason, I can understand. Klein put a small lamb chop onto the plate in front of him. What do you want to do? Is it still in time to cancel my leave? Kornli smiled. I want to make a commission. At 2:45 p.m., Kornli sat on the sofa in the downstairs living room, drew the black curtains Klein had recently bought, locked the front and back doors, and sat peacefully on the sofa. Klein, on the other hand, went to the upstairs bedroom, also locked the door, took 4 steps counterclockwise in the room, and arrived above the gray fog. It's about time. Kornli was killing time with a newspaper when the thick gray fog appeared before his eyes. The fool sat on the high-backed chair above the gray fog and announced in a calm voice. Prepare for the gathering. Phew, finally made it in time. Kornli put down the newspaper and let the gray fog envelop his entire body. He entered Saphira Castle once again and sat in his designated seat. Chapter 192, Kornli's Proposal. The image of the Hanged Man, Alger, appeared at the upper end of his side. Today, he was wearing a floral shirt in the style of the archipelago and a pair of long checkered pants. Half of the shirt was left outside his belt, making him look very unconventional. The clothing style of the archipelago pirates was somewhat like the era before the Great Depression in the United States before he came here, unconventional and expressive of individuality. The figure of a young male appeared at the lower end of his side. His body leaned straight against the back of the chair, appearing stiff, restrained, and a bit at a loss. His clothes were out of step with mainstream fashion, black, tight-fitting, and with thin straps at the wrists that could tighten the cuffs at any time. This style is good, I like it. Kornli took a hard look at Derek Berg's attire. Klein should have already given him the Bard potion. Our little son has also appeared in the Tarot Club. Good afternoon, Mr. Fool. Audrey's figure appeared in her seat. She habitually stood up, took a step to the left, lifted the long white dress she was wearing today, and bowed to Mr. Fool at the upper end with impeccable etiquette. Good afternoon, Mr. Hanged Man. Good afternoon, Mr. Lovers. Audrey's eyes looked at the gentleman sitting below, the Lovers, her eyes slightly sizing him up. If her memory served her right, that gentleman was wearing a garment similar to a man's hunting suit that was popular during the Third Epoch. The clothes with straps on the wrists could prevent insects from crawling in between the arm and the clothes at any time, and could also be used as a tourniquet. The trousers were of a common style, but only had a pocket on one side. The pocket opening appeared wide, clearly for the convenience of taking things out, which was out of place with current men's decorative pocket openings. His hands were crossed together, and his slightly trembling thumbs showed a hint of nervousness. Although his gaze could not be seen through the gray mist, from her own feelings, what made him nervous was, here, not, the fool, at the upper end. It wasn't his first time coming here, but it was his first time participating in a formal, tarot club, gathering, hence the nervousness. Audrey, who had already advanced to a telepathist, reached this conclusion almost without thinking. This is Mr. Sun, a new member of the tarot club. Mr. Sun, the two gentlemen above you are Mr. Hanged Man and Mr. Lovers, respectively. Opposite you is Miss Justice. Klein gave an introduction to everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Sun. Audrey gave a brisk bow to the captain and then sat in her seat with satisfaction. Ah, hello. Derek seemed very unaccustomed to such etiquette. In the City of Silver, everyone was used to nodding as a greeting. Even for very familiar people, there would be no extra movements in the greeting. If the opponent suddenly pulled out a weapon while you were bowing, then it was very likely that this precious second you lost would be the last second of your life. Mr. Fool, I have collected 3 pages of Roussel's diary this week, Audrey said. Mr. Fool, I only have 2 pages of Roussel's diary this week, and I expect there will be more next week, Alger said, following closely behind Audrey. He carefully looked at his side. Mr. Lovers did not speak, proving that he had not collected any of Roussel's diaries this week. Fool. In any Beander gathering, if one doesn't have special abilities, pleasing the host of the gathering is a necessary move. It can both protect oneself and provide leverage when needed. Kornli didn't know Alger's current thoughts, otherwise, he would definitely curse him to his face as an idiot. Very good. Klein nodded, watching 5 pages of Roussel's diary appear before him. He flipped through them one by one briefly. Let's begin today's transaction process. Your last transaction went smoothly, the fool said in a calm tone from the upper end. He had received £30 in pocket money under Kornli's suggestion. A huge shock manifested in Alger's heart. He knew very well how much power this one move implied. Members could send money, information, and mystical items to each other. Even if he were in West Balam, if he wanted to get first-hand information from Backlund, he would only need to pray to the fool. It was simply too convenient. Mr. Fool, thank you for the convenience you provided. Audrey's joyful voice came from the opposite side. Mr. Lovers, do you have the potion formula for the next stage, sequence 7, on your end? May I know the name of the potion for the next stage? Psychiatrist. This is the name of the next stage of the spectator sequence, or if you prefer another name, psychologist, Kornli said with a smile. Oh, psychiatrist. It sounds very mysterious. I'm becoming more and more interested in the potion for the next stage. I only have the main part of the psychiatrist potion. If you need it, I can give this part of the information to you, Kornli said. For free. No, Mr. Lovers. I know that in mysticism, no piece of information is free. I can pay the corresponding reward, Audrey quickly refused. After entering the telepathist stage, she knew that for mysticism, any news would be accompanied by the existence of etiquette. Equivalent exchange was the best thing. If you charge in pounds. Audrey said in a low voice. Besides having a bit of money, she was an absolute pauper in the field of mysticism. Of course, this information is not free, Kornli said. I need you to do something for me. There's no danger, but it requires the use of your ability. I believe that after you got the formula last week, you are already a telepathist this week. Mr. Lovers just wants to borrow my power. Wants me to observe another person. Audrey's heart stirred. She thought for a few seconds and answered with a slight hesitation. The fact that you gave me the formula in advance last time proves your trust in me. As you know, I have indeed become a telepathist now. But you should know that even though I have advanced to a telepathist, my self-protection ability is still very weak. If your action does not involve dangerous activities, I am willing to try. Klein nodded in his heart. As expected of Audrey after her advancement, her words and deeds were a bit less reckless and had more thought than before. Don't worry, this task is absolutely not dangerous, Kornli said with a smile. Chapter 193 The City of Silver lies in the forsaken land of the gods. In our previous gatherings, Miss Justice once mentioned that you are currently in Backlund. I wonder if you are familiar with the sea god sacrifice that will travel from Backlund to Pritz Harbor tomorrow. You mean this? Audrey folded her hands over her chest and cast her gaze upward, as though recalling the last time she had watched the sea god sacrifice. In my memory, every sea god sacrifice looks much the same. People gather outside the palace gates or along the main road, waiting for the queen, playing the role of the sea god's daughter, to ride her flower-decked carriage from the palace gate, exit the eastern gate, follow the highway to Pritz Harbor, and present to the sea god a sacrificial ship's flag, 3 drops of blood, and a captain's hat. Audrey rechecked the 3 items and nodded. Yes, those are the 3 things I remember. The flag stands for smooth sailing, the blood for awe of the sea, and the captain's hat for the vessel's obedience. Alger chuckled. LotM launched a brand new ironclad today, so the flag they offer will probably be that one. There's that much nuance to it. Kornli nodded silently, taking mental notes. The 3 drops of blood are collected on the spot. What happens if the flag or the captain's hat is wrong? Kornli turned to the hanged man. What price must I pay for the answer? No need, any sailor who's shipped out more than 3 years will give you the same reply, Alger said. It's a grand annual festival. If the officiant brings the wrong flag or an ill-matching captain's hat, the sea god will still take notice, but it becomes a huge joke, Alger explained. At least in LotM, that shouldn't happen. So that's how it is. If you need me to attend the sea god sacrifice, whom exactly should I observe? Audrey asked curiously. A vague answer glimmered in her mind, along with a flicker of anticipation, the thrill of an impending adventure that only women truly savor. Queen Ophelia Augustus, Kornli replied calmly. How could it be? Why Queen Ophelia? Countless question marks crowded Audrey's thoughts, yet she had no way to ask Mr. Lovers for details. For her, this was no trouble at all. As a bargain, her side had clearly gained the upper hand. Queen Ophelia was one of Mother's closest friends. Every month at court gatherings Mother would visit the palace to take tea and chat with the queen. As a child Audrey had joined them, but after stepping into the world of Beyonders she seldom entered their circle again. May I ask, has something happened to Queen Ophelia? Audrey murmured. I'll explain during the open exchange, Kornli said. So, Miss Justice, do you accept this deal? I accept, Audrey answered with a nod. Informing her family that she would attend the sea god sacrifice was no problem. She could simply rent someone's balcony, sip black tea, and observe from close range. And there was Susie, dear Susie, now also a spectator, able to supply useful information. Then the deal is struck. Kornli materialized paper and pen, scribbled a few lines, and handed the sheet to Audrey. Audrey took it gladly and read the lines silently. A pair of mirror dragon eyes, plus 1 elder tree fruit. Such odd items, she had never even heard of them. But this was the world of Beyonders, boundless knowledge, and power seasoned with a dash of danger. I'll find a way to watch her actions, and after the sea god sacrifice I'll pray to Mr. Fool and report the details to you, Audrey said, nodding. I ask Mr. Fool to witness our transaction. Granted, Klein replied with a slight nod from the head of the table. He, too, was curious what case Kornli had become entangled in. Clearly this was beyond the reach of 2 Sequence 8 Beyonders, yet if they could glean some benefit, even a scrap of hidden knowledge, it would be worth it for understanding this world. I don't need any mystical items or materials at the moment, but Mr. Lovers, if you still have that wind-blessed Beyonder characteristic, I'd like you to hold it for me a while, Alger said hesitantly. In roughly 2 weeks he could gather all the ingredients for the Seafarer potion, but he would have barely 600 pounds left. He still had to hunt for the wind-blessed formula. If he could obtain the Beyonder characteristic instead, that would do. After all, it was a Sequence 6 ingredient. Fine, 100 pounds a month, Kornli said. This month is free, payment starts next month. Oof. A holding fee of 100 pounds for a formula worth 3,500 wasn't exorbitant, yet neither was it cheap. Mr. Lovers had set the price precisely at the limit of Alger's tolerance. The figure quoted last week had merely been a probe. Crafty old fox. Agreed, Alger said through gritted teeth. I'll sacrifice 100 pounds to Mr. Fool this week and ask him to pass it to you. Ha, I seem to have become a toll collector of fortune. Klein shifted his weight, hands sliding slightly along the arms of his chair. May I propose a trade as well? Son Derek raised his right hand, timidly asking. Of course. The Tarot Club is equal and encourages fair exchange, Justice Audrey said. Then I need the light supplicant potion formula. I can trade secret knowledge and the history of the City of Silver, Derek said, mustering his courage. Sorry, I've never seen the name City of Silver on any chart, Alger replied, puzzled. As a sailor, I ought to know every island and city. The City of Silver is not on any known continent, the fool's voice sounded from the head of the table. It lies in the forsaken land of the gods. Chapter 194, the answer to the most critical question. Another continent. Alger's mind conjured up the oceans and routes he had once traveled, and he couldn't help but marvel at the great power of the fool. Open black lens bracket. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name, Taiwan Fiction Network. It's very easy to use and comprehensive, close black lens bracket. The fixed shipping lanes within those berserk seas were already the result of decades or even centuries of adventurers sacrificing countless lives. Not to mention those islands, landmasses, and unknown things that loomed indistinctly within the fog sea. The hurricanes and storms that perpetually shrouded the ruins of the Battle of the Gods acted like barriers, making it difficult for ordinary ferries and adventurer ships to cross. Even if one ventured through the southernmost part of the Sonia Sea, they would be sucked directly into the seabed by underwater whirlpools that could appear at any moment. In the Church of the Lord of Storms, the reports of missing ships had already piled up into a small mountain. This only included confirmed ships and captains, and God knows how many more remained unconfirmed. Truly terrifying. Perhaps, here at the Tarot Club, we will learn more about the truths of this world. Wasn't this exactly why he had done everything in his power to obtain the Azure Avenger? The forsaken land of the gods, huh? What a miraculous name. Which god exactly abandoned them, and where were they abandoned to? Judging by Mr. Sun's clothing, they should share the same ancestors and aesthetics as us, which means they should belong to the same world. Mr. Fool, where would the forsaken land of the gods be? Audrey asked softly. Good question. If I knew, I would answer you. But I don't know right now either. This is not something you should know at your current level, the fool said from the seat of honor in an indisputable tone. This is knowledge we shouldn't know yet. Audrey was suddenly startled. Yes, as you will. Audrey stood up and bowed slightly to the fool, once more. As you will. Kornli bowed slightly from his seat toward the head of the table. As you wish, Mr. Fool. Seeing both of them say so, Alger could only passively follow their lead. Mr. Sun, we believe the knowledge you can provide must be very precious, but we are not sure if the things you can exchange for are what we want, Alger said. Could you provide a list for us to choose from? We all believe that fair trade is the prerequisite for the Tarot Club to exist long-term. A very fair proposal, Derek Berg said. I will provide a list of items available for trade at the next gathering, which will include knowledge that can be exchanged. Mystical items can also be traded here. Audrey looked at the fool at the head of the table. His nod was clearly visible through the gray fog. Miss Justice, you can introduce the relevant ritual rules to Mr. Sun. Klein believed that his layer of gray fog was sufficient to penetrate spatial barriers. Letting the Sun try would do no harm to himself. The dual ritual method, the honorific name is. Derek was taking notes very seriously when he suddenly looked up and said, Mr. Fool, many people in my hometown are looking forward to your salvation. May I let them know as well? Sigh, what an impatient kid. Without the permission of the fool, one must not praise his name, Kornli said quietly beside him. Perhaps life in the forsaken land of the gods isn't necessarily what you want, but changing too quickly is not a good thing for the Tarot Club. The Empress, Backlund, the sea god sacrifice, and various mystical events were silently recorded by Derek. He planned to go to the library to look up related knowledge once this gathering ended. On the other end of this world, there is a group of people, a large group of people, living lives completely different from ours. Truly miraculous. Derek nodded. You were right, Mr. Lovers. I was too hasty. Klein waited for a few minutes. Seeing that no one else was speaking, he lightly tapped the armrest with his right hand. Then, you may communicate freely. Kornli instantly felt 3 gazes fall upon him. I will explain the reason why I asked Miss Justice to do that just now. In fact, it starts with a case that happened in Backlund. Kornli organized his thoughts and recounted in detail the case in Backlund, his conversation with Viscount Darren Garcia, and all of his deductions. Of course, he partially hid the names of the relevant people involved. Audrey couldn't believe her ears. She instantly felt the values she had built since childhood were being smashed into the ground by Mr. Lovers, and then Susie dug a hole and buried them deep. Empress Ophelia is a fake. She has been dead since the time of their grand wedding. She had met Empress Ophelia many times. Kind, beautiful, and gentle, the Empress was a presence in her heart second only to her mother in terms of kindness. How could she be a man in the mirror, another side that came out from a mirror? Even though Alger had made some mental preparations, his mouth remained wide open upon hearing this news, as if he had forgotten to close it. If not for the gray fog constantly obscuring his expression, his face would have already lost all rational control. Even so, his hands tightly gripped the armrests, striving to make his movements appear normal and error-free. Mr. Lovers, is what you're saying true? Alger asked stutteringly. You've already lost your composure, Mr. Hanged Man. Klein slightly raised his eyebrows from the seat of honor, completely forgetting the scene where he had sprayed black tea all over the table when he first heard this news. I believe most conclusions stem from reasonable deductions, but I think everyone knows that such reasonable deductions are not far from the truth, Kornli said confidently. Now, only one question troubles me. Everyone pricked up their ears, as did Klein at the head of the table. Time had been tight earlier, and Kornli hadn't mentioned this part. First, Empress Ophelia knows she is a man in the mirror, and George III also knows he married a man in the mirror. Then, was the decision to steal those love letters made by the Empress, or by George III? The answer to this question is very critical, Kornli sighed. I believe the answer will definitely manifest during tomorrow's sea god sacrifice. Kornli crossed his hands over his lap and scanned the room with a confident gaze. That will be all for today's gathering, Klein suddenly said from the seat of honor in an unquestionable tone. With the Tarot Club adding 2 people at once, his spirituality was already starting to reach its limit. Chapter 195, Kornli's final conclusion. Praise the fool. Everyone rose, right hand over their hearts, and bowed toward Klein at the head of the table, and one by one their figures vanished from the bronze-long table, leaving only Kornli behind. The gray mist before the 2 men dispersed, and Kornli snapped his fingers, swapping his seat with that of the hanged man. 2 extra-large colas appeared in front of him and Klein. Damn it, Pepsi again, still, better than nothing. Kornli took a long sip. Only here can I satisfy the itch. Klein handed over the 5 pages of Russell's diary he had just obtained. Kornli's eyes swept over them quickly. 3 pages were Russell's youthful memoirs, today with a baroness, a few days ago with a young lady, last week with a woman from the demonist sect, nothing suitable for children. His life was certainly colorful, but Kornli had no interest in men on men. The remaining 2 pages described how he ordered Admiral Edwards to take a fleet to sea, but only the first half was there, the critical second half Kornli had not seen. Boring. Kornli stood up, filed the 5 pages, and returned to his seat. What are you hoping to find in these diaries? Klein asked. I hope to find something about after he became ruler of the Intis Republic, something that might clear up some doubts, Kornli shook his head. Unfortunately, nothing yet. Hey, wait, now it looks like he could get something. The Black Emperor card was still sitting in a Backlund museum awaiting his favor. Not yet. I need the right moment, a perfect opportunity. So close to Pritz Harbor, will you go tomorrow? I will. It will clear up a massive question, Kornli said. What exactly does George III want? Klein nodded and tapped his right hand, Kornli, and he vanished from Saphira Castle. Hey, you're too impatient, Kornli complained, sitting up from the sofa. I didn't even get to taste 8 flavors of milk tea. You didn't cook the big plate chicken either. Klein came downstairs, disgruntled, and took out 2 wide ceramic plates from the kitchen that looked perfect for the dish and wide noodles. These 2 plates cost me 6 sol. I really have no time today, Kornli stood up, drained the cold remaining black tea. I still need to work with Al Hassan's squad on tomorrow's operation. You're back with the Nighthawks, how I envy you, Klein said. Do you need me tomorrow? Better not, Kornli shook his head firmly. Your presence won't change the outcome, and Al Hassan doesn't know about you. The captain knows you're in Backlund, but not that you're in Al's squad. In other words, the information is asymmetrical. If I appear, the cover might be blown. Klein shrugged regretfully. Pity, I wanted to watch the show. Let Miss Justice give you a live commentary, Kornli grinned. You know you'll get first-hand info from me whatever happens. Klein nodded. Got it. Kornli left Klein's house and took a private carriage back to the squad station. When he entered the second floor, the wall clock struck 6. 6 o'clock in the evening. In the squad room were Grand Deacon Cresta, Captain Al, Madame Lotta, and Miguel, who was anxiously watching the clock, all waiting for him. Praise the goddess, right on time, Kornli smiled. I believe you already know what happened this morning. I had Forensic Valentine rush the autopsy, Captain Al said, pushing a 3-page report to Kornli's desk. Kornli glanced at it. The conclusion matched what he had seen on site. I suspect this is related to Ophelia's man in the mirror carrying the bloodline of Truncest, Kornli began. From my afternoon investigation, George III's desire to marry into the Truncest family is to prove he still has legitimate succession rights in the secular world. No, what he really wants is after becoming a god to locate the Saphira nation of disorder, but that conclusion is too convoluted and would require explaining to Lotta and Miguel how a Sequence 8 Beander knows secrets only demigods and angels should know. Using secular terms is the better approach. He is already king of Loan. Captain Al muttered, gaze turning sharp. Yes, but I mean the empire that split into Massey, Finepotter, Loan, and Siegel after Emperor Russell's death, Kornli said. I don't understand, but I'm impressed, Miguel yawned hugely. What's the difference between having 100 mu or 10,000 mu of land? For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.